Luke adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, stealing a glance at Megan across their sun-drenched Manhattan apartment. She was beautiful in the morning light, sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone, dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. The morning sunlight caught the diamond on her wedding ring, 3 years married and still as stunning as the day they met. "Dinner at Marconi's tonight?" he asked, grabbing his keys from the counter. "I made reservations for 8. "Perfect." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, something he'd been noticing more lately. They had everything: successful careers, his in IT security for a major bank, hers in pharmaceutical marketing, the trendy Upper West Side apartment with skyline views, weekend brunches with friends, and plans for a house in Connecticut. From the outside, their life was Instagram-worthy perfection. Yet lately, something felt imperceptibly off-kilter, like a painting hanging slightly crooked. Luke couldn't name it, but it lingered just beneath their perfect surface, a subtle current of unease that kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was changing between them. Was it just the natural evolution of marriage, or something more troubling? 3 weeks later, Luke noticed the shifts more clearly: Megan's late nights at client meetings, the way she angled her phone away when texting, how she'd slip into the bathroom to take calls, the shower running to mask her voice, the perfume that wasn't the one he'd bought her for Christmas. Her wardrobe had changed too: more effort, different styles, small things that wouldn't matter in isolation, but together formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. The casual intimacy between them had faded. Fewer touches, distracted kisses. "Everything okay with us?" he asked one evening over barely touched takeout. "Just busy with the Harrington campaign," she answered, too quickly. "The launch is in 3 weeks. You know how it gets." That night, Luke woke at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. From the living room, he heard her whisper, "No, he doesn't suspect anything. I'm being careful. It will all be over soon, I promise." His stomach knotted as he silently returned to bed. Was he imagining things, or was his perfect life unraveling thread by thread before his eyes? The doubt crept into his mind like poison. After a week of sleepless nights, Luke decided to surprise Megan with lunch at Café Louis, their favorite bistro near her office. Through the window, he spotted her at a corner table, not alone. A man with salt and pepper hair leaned close, his hand covering hers. Distinguished, confident, maybe mid-40s. The expensive watch on his wrist caught the light as he touched her cheek with unexpected familiarity. When he whispered something, Megan's laugh was different, freer, more genuine than any laugh Luke had heard from her in months. She tucked her hair behind her ear, her nervous habit when she was attracted to someone. Their conversation looked intense, intimate in a way that twisted Luke's heart. As their fingers intertwined and the man's thumb caressed her wrist, Luke's heart hammered against his ribs. He raised his phone, capturing the moment his world collapsed, then turned away before they could spot him, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. In the taxi home, he stared at the photo until his vision blurred with unshed tears. "How long?" Luke's voice was eerily calm as he slid the photo across their dining table that evening. The pasta he'd cooked, her favorite, sat untouched between them. Megan's eyes widened. "It's not what?" "Don't." His voice cracked. "Just tell me the truth for once." Her facade crumbled momentarily before hardening into something cold, unfamiliar. "You want to talk about truth, Luke? Where were you when I was drowning? When I told you I needed more from this relationship? You never noticed how unhappy I've been." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Had he been so blind to her needs? Or was this manipulation, shifting blame for her betrayal? "That's not fair," he said softly. "You never said anything was wrong. We were talking about starting a family last month. I shouldn't have had to spell it out. Her eyes glistened. You should have known. Looking at her now, this stranger wearing his wife's face, Luke wondered if he'd ever really known her at all. While Megan showered the next morning, Luke did something he never imagined himself doing. He unlocked her phone using the password he'd secretly watched her enter days before. His hands trembled with shame and anger as he opened her messages. The conversation with David went back 6 months. Terms of endearment, meeting plans, inside jokes Luke wasn't part of. But it was the other messages that made his blood run cold. Cryptic exchanges about deliveries and clients and packages that couldn't possibly be marketing campaigns. The name Carter Pharmaceuticals appeared repeatedly, connected to an address in Brooklyn. Luke recognized it, a research facility where Megan had worked before switching to marketing 3 years ago. A facility that had made headlines for questionable practices before being quietly acquired by a larger corporation. His thumb hovered over a message from David. Remember what happened to the last person who asked too many questions? We can't afford another cleanup. Keep your husband in the dark, for everyone's safety. Luke's hands trembled as he replaced the phone. What had Megan gotten herself into? The affair was just the surface of something much darker, something dangerous. The building in Brooklyn looked abandoned, windows dusty and covered with old newspaper. But Luke noticed the security cameras tracking his movement, too new and too numerous for a defunct business. The side entrance had a keypad that looked recently installed. Inside, delivery boxes were stacked high, all labeled with the name of Megan's marketing firm. A map on the wall had pins in cities across the country, with red strings connecting them in an intricate web. Medical terminology he didn't understand was scrawled across a whiteboard. Compound 37B, neural pathway inhibitors, untraceable delivery systems. Can I help you? A security guard appeared seemingly from nowhere, hand resting near his waistband in a way that made Luke's mouth go dry. The bulge under his jacket wasn't subtle. I'm looking for David Carter. My wife works with him. The guard's expression darkened. No one by that name here. You need to leave, now. As Luke turned to go, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. For your own safety and hers. This isn't a game you want to play. Outside, he spotted a black sedan idling across the street, the same one he'd noticed near their apartment that morning. Someone was watching them both. Who's Carter? Luke demanded when Megan arrived home, her eyes tired and wary, her face drained of color. How do you... Stop lying! Luke's fist slammed the table. The affair is bad enough, but what are you involved in? What's in those packages from your company? Tears streamed down her face. It started small, just sharing research data from my old company. Then David said they needed someone on the inside of different pharmaceutical companies. Marketing was perfect for access. You're stealing corporate secrets? It's bigger than that, she whispered, voice breaking. It's not just data. It's experimental formulas, compounds being tested off the books without FDA approval. Performance enhancers the military is interested in. Luke stared at her in disbelief. Why? For money at first. Then, she swallowed hard. People have died, Luke. Test subjects. And I know too much to walk away now. They'd never let me. I've seen what they do to people who try to leave. Luke tracked down David at a hotel bar downtown, sliding onto the stool beside him. He'd followed Megan's car there, watching from across the street as she met with David in the lobby before leaving alone. She never mentioned a husband. David smirked over his whiskey. Quite the oversight. Cut the act. What's really going on at Carter Pharmaceuticals? David's smile vanished. You're out of your depth. Try me. Your wife has been helping us access experimental compounds from various labs, compounds worth billions on the black market, military applications. She's good, uses her marketing position to move between companies undetected. Does she know people have died? David's silence was answer enough. Walk away, David warned, leaning closer. Megan made her choice. Make the right one, or you'll be next. We'd hate for something unfortunate to happen to such a promising young couple. As David left, Luke pressed stop on the recording app on his phone, his heart racing with both fear and determination. There was no walking away now. Luke sat in FBI agent Torres's office, playing the recording of his conversation with David. You did the right thing coming forward, Torres said, sliding a folder across her desk. With your evidence, we can finally shut down Carter's operation. And Megan? Torres exchanged glances with her colleague. Your wife's been working with us for 18 months, Mr. Collins. She's our undercover agent. Luke's world tilted. What? We recruited her after Carter approached her at her previous job. The affair, the secrecy, all part of her cover. She couldn't tell you. It would have put you both in danger. As the door opened and Megan entered wearing her FBI jacket, Luke finally saw the truth. The late nights, the secrecy, the distant look in her eyes that he'd misinterpreted as guilt was actually the weight of her dangerous assignment. I'm sorry, Megan whispered, tears in her eyes. I wanted to tell you so many times. Every day was a lie, and it was killing me. He hadn't been living with a betrayer. He'd been living with a stranger far braver than he ever knew. Luke reached for her hand, seeing her clearly for the first time in months. So there was never— No, she said firmly. There was never anyone else, just the job. As Luke processed the truth, another realization dawned. The danger wasn't over. It had just begun, and they were now in it together. We need to move you both to a safe house, Torres said. Carter's people know we're on to them, and they'll be looking for revenge. The perfect life they'd built was gone. But maybe, Luke thought as he squeezed Megan's hand, the truth was worth the price of perfection.
If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications.